Welcome. We are here with another episode of reading of our read throughs, and we are on chapter 9 of Feather Sharp as Knives. Super excited. If I'm going to be putting a card here, if you guys want to see the previous video where we talked about basically Venezia doing some plotting, more plotting, because that's what she does. She's a plotter, much like the author of this book plots books. Anyway, so today we'll be doing a just the read through. Like and subscribe if you guys like these read throughs. You're learning a lot about these books and some writing things we can learn. Let's see what we can get from chapter 9 of Feather Sharper's Knives. Now, if this is the first video you're seeing on it, feel free to jump into the playlist and check out the other read throughs and stuff. But we're learning a bunch of different things, and so we'll be talking about the lesson that we learned from this read through at the end of the video and just throughout it. So enjoy the read through, and let's jump right into it. So let's see here. So Feather Sharp as Knives, chapter 9. Imelda sat at her window watching gondolae and galleys floating on the canal far below. Cold rain spattered the window and her breath fogged the glass. Her room at the Palazzo didn't have a nice view. The living quarters there all faced the street. This morning she'd awoken to the sight of servants on foot and nobles in seated litters going about their business, and the black monstrosity of the Senate Hall nearly blocking out the sky. Just another thing to hate about moving into the Palazzo. She'd spun all day the day before, and Aruturo told her it was enough, that she needed to regain her strength. But she couldn't stay at the Palazzo, sitting around with nothing to distract her from the days until she could see Anselmo again, or from her engagement. So she returned to Cax Albizi for the day. The house was mostly empty, though a few servants were still there, raiding the house for vacancy. She turned her attention to the mask in her lap. It was for Arturo, even though he'd resist wearing it. It was a half-faced mask, painted midnight blue and edged in crimson. It was inspired by Opa's funeral, the dark blue of mourning, the red of the linen coroncanto. Imelda walked to her desk, which was littered with feathers, masks, and paint. Carnivale was only 2 days away. She needed to finish this mask. She had a few to make for herself. She tapped the side. It needed something else. A silver design around the eyes, perhaps. Nothing too dainty, of course. Not that Arturo would notice. Arturo walked in. They're ready. He paused at sight of the mask and leaned over to study it. Macabre? He said approvingly. She hid the mask behind her back, not because it was a surprise, but to keep him from getting distracted. What already? The wings, of course. Already? I thought it would be another 2 or 3 days. Arturo grinned and pulled to her feet. I paid the seamstresses extra to stay late last night. They hurried up to the dome on the roof. I can't believe the wings are ready that fast. That's really early play in the book. This is interesting. This was Arturo's spot in the floor. This was Arturo's spot in the house, more than his own room. He'd put a sleeping pallet on the floor on one side and had a small desk made to fit in here, which was covered in notebooks with scribblings of notes and numbers. Today, 2 sets of wings were propped against opposite sides of the table. They were both large, though one set was considerably bigger. A patchwork of black leather covered the wooden frames, and red corontanto zigzagged through the leather. Imelda set Arturo's Carnival mask on his desk and knelt in front of the smaller pair of wings. I thought we were using feathers this time. I skipped them for the sake of time. Imelda sighed. They're so ugly. Beauty doesn't equal utility. But I think it could. It seems like a good idea to try to mimic the real thing as much as possible. Bats fly without feathers. She ran a hand across one wing. The leather had been patched together in any which way, which made sense since birds weren't exactly as big as cows. That combined with the red corontanto created a visual mess. But he was right. They didn't have to be beautiful to fly. What kind of bird is it again? Albatross, Arturo grinned. Have you watched one fly before? I've heard they can go months without touching land. I still can't believe that. It's in Promet's volumes in the natural world. He observed, okay, never mind. She had to cut him off before he got started, or she'd be stuck listening to him all day. She turned him around and started putting the harness on. Arturo came over to help. You think it'll actually work? She asked. Given the trajectory of our experiments, I'll be shocked if it doesn't. Cow leather wouldn't even flap. Chicken failed, likely because they barely fly when they're alive. We need a large bird that flies well. What better than albatross? I don't know how I ever missed the idea in the first place. A huge oversight on my part. He wondered how he'd failed to consider an albatross, but really what he failed to see was the genius in the idea. Who else would consider albatross? They finished strapping Imelda in, and he helped her stand, which she could barely do even with his help. She had to lean on him almost entirely to keep from falling back. The harness dug into her skin and it was hard to breathe. This wasn't different than any of their previous designs, but it didn't make it less unpleasant. But once airborne, those issues would disappear. Just like all her problems in life would disappear if these were successful. Venezia would pay them for the wings, and Imelda would be free. Free of Primo, free of the marriage, free to be with Anselmo. Oh, what a girl. Holy Mother Ray, please let these work. Arturo helped her outside. A breeze blew. The wind stirred the feathers, then nothing. Imelda sighed. Wait, Arturo said. Give it a moment. The wind blew stronger, swirling Imelda's hair around her face. The wings started to flap. Imelda laughed as she lifted into the air. The ascent lasted for only a few seconds. Then she hovered with the wings slowly beating. How high am I? She asked. Arturo pressed his lips as he studied the gap. About a meter, I think. They're not strong enough. Disappointed lines lined the edges of his voice. That's twice as much as last time. But it's not real flight, he muttered. A gust cut across the rooftop, and the wings jerked into motion, racing her toward the edge of the house. Arturo! He jumped and grabbed her feet just before she flew out over the edge. His weight brought her down, and she landed on top of it. The wings beat against the rooftop for a moment, then stilled. Imelda dragged herself off her brother. Are you okay? She began, then stopped. Arturo was laughing. He stood, then helped her to her feet, tears leaking from his eyes. Now that's his flight. But you said they weren't strong enough. He hugged her tight, even tried lifting her off her feet, which he couldn't with the wings still attached to her. It's a good thing, too, or you would have been lost to the wind. So they're going to work? Yes! He helped her out of the harness, and together they carried the wings, one by one, to the dome. They do need to be stronger, so you'll need to spin more wool, but we'll clearly need a way to control them. I have an idea. Oh, but it'll take some time to implement. I'll hurry as much as I can. Our deadline just got tighter. What? Arturo picked up his carnival mask, turned it this way and that to expect it. Primo talked to me before I came over here. He's found a wife for me. Kind of. She took the mask and held it to her face. Then the burial-themed mask is appropriate. You can wear it at your wedding. Who's the lucky girl? Oh, man. Her name's Calixta. Imelda's snort laughed. The only Calixta I've heard of is that princess in Ilios, and there's no way that's who you're engaged to. Actually, Arturo retrieved his mask. Her full name is Calixta Heraclius, Imperial Princess of Ilios, and second in line for the throne. She's sailing here as we speak. Porzel Primo, Imelda muttered. Arturo laughed. Such language. I'd be shocked if we hadn't learned it from our brothers. Why are you so calm? She'll be here in a matter of days, and the wings are far from ready. They're not as far as you think. Today was a huge success. He sat on his cot and scratched on his cheek. But I know. I might want to marry her anyway. Arturo, she sat next to him. The whole point of the wings is to get away from Primo, which is what this marriage will do. You think you'd hold any power over me once I'm a prince of Ilios? The wings are also meant to get us out of these marriages, and this marriage might be the best thing to happen to me. So she must be a looker. That must be it, man. Calixta must be one saucy lady. He probably doesn't mind at all. He stood and started pacing, mask held behind his back. I don't want to worry about investing the money Venezia gives us. I want to read and research and invent, not run a business. As long as this princess doesn't mind me doing that, It would be the ideal situation for me. I don't have anyone else like you have in Selmo. He stopped. Plus, she's a famous beauty. Rumors always make people out to be more attractive than they are. Primo showed me a portrait, and portrait artists are liars. I don't care much about that anyway, as long as she's kind. I bet she's hideous and cruel. He smirked. I'll take that bet. 1,000 ducats? 3. Like they have any money. They kissed cheeks 6 times, then laughed. It felt good to laugh, but there was a tightness in Imelda's chest. This joke was one of Imelda's greatest nightmares. But Ilios is so far, at least 500 kilometers away. Almost 1,000, actually. She clenched her teeth, resisting strangling him. How could he be so obtuse at a time like this? You and Samo can visit me, he said. Or better yet, live in Ilios. She toyed with her hair. That's a lot to assume about Anselmo. Arturo snorted. Please, he would follow you anywhere. Not a, don't say it. I was going to say something sexist. She looked at the wings. She looked at the wings leaning against the wall. They were so close and yet still so far. She scrubbed her face. You said Primo has kind of found a wife for you? What does that mean? Apparently, it's not completely settled. She has to agree to the marriage. That's why she's coming here. Must be nice to be in control of your own marriage. You do have control. Spin as much wool as you can for the next 2 days, without hurting yourself, of course. I'll do my part and will perfect the wings. You'll be free to be with Anselmo if I marry Calixta. It'll be because it's my choice and not Primo's bidding. Wind rattled at the door and windows as he shivered. Plus, it's warm in Ilios all year long. Imelda wouldn't let Arturo's unexpected willingness to crush her hope, to marry crush her hope. She couldn't. He was right after all, about all of it. But it hurt that he would so easily consider moving over 1,000 kilometers away for a cushy life and pretty face. Hey man, obviously she has a lot to learn about men. But he didn't have anyone. And even though he'd never let on that he was disappointed, having had no romantic relationships in the past, she'd always suspected. Why did it have to be someone from so far away, though? She'd have to leave Venezia to stay close to Arturo. It was an easy choice. It was Anne, so we need a little Anne. It was an easy choice, but not one she wanted to make. Focus on the wings, focus on Anselmo, focus on beating Primo at his own game, focus on Arturo's happiness as well as her own. The wings had been a simple dream for a while, but now they meant so much more, and Imelda wanted more. That's a damn good written chapter, guys. That's a so there's some pretty interesting basics that are being done here, right? And obviously nothing too complex, but just okay. So we have a major. So she tests the wings. We've got good brevity with the pacing, and I really, really like obviously the change of situation, right? So we see there's we see a time bomb's been added because of this marriage. You're adding some bits of character with Arturo, and you're stirring the pot. So things happened in this chapter, right? Even though it was them. They tested the wings and then they talked in a room, and I'm excited to see where it goes with Anselmo, and because his perspective is going to be interesting once he kind of learns these facts of the matter because he's gotten into the labyrinth now. And Imelda, of course, is really tied to him, trying to make it work. And she's all about this dude. And it's going to be really interesting to see them as they complete the wings. Real talk, one of the things I'm most excited about just in reading this is once things sort of get to a high tension point, right? So I imagine and someone getting into the labyrinth, Imelda sort of revealing her plot, or Primo coming to terms, seeing what she's trying to do, or maybe her trying to hide that from him as they kind of go through that because she's now living in the palazzo, right? So she can't hide from that anymore. And then obviously this marriage with Arturo, that's a big plot point, right? Because now Arturo may or may not be in the picture, so she doesn't have the support for the wings that she thought she would have. So this is all really good elements, right? So you see this chapter is just bringing up important elements, and it's a good example of what how to write a quick chapter. You don't need too much information, but where you can have lots of things coming in. So you have a change in potential setting with Arturo. You've definitely changed the premise as how the wings are going, because moving forward, we see he's going to get married off. And then specifically, now the wings are working and we see sort of an update of that. And that was a really good idea too. Too oftentimes we'll have elements of a story, say a comet that's going to come hit the earth. And we are trying to understand, okay, this is what's going to hit us and this is what we're running from. But then the entire story, the threat or the check off of that doesn't actually happen or occur throughout the story until it happens. I think I love this book, but I think an example of sort of not bringing the antagonizing element forward is Mistborn. Is a really, really good book, but the Lord Ruler is at the beginning and at the end, right? And Steelheart also had this problem by Brandon Sanderson, where basically the big plot point that we had. Now, granted, those are such strong books and the writing is so great that you forget about the fact that the main antagonizing force literally is not present throughout the book. So there's that sense of urgency and tension might be lacking in some of those. I think in the Steelheart series, a much better job was done in the second one, Firefight. I think Firefight's probably one of my favorite YA books of all time, but it's because the antagonizing force, the water lady, I can't even remember her name, but she was constantly throughout the book antagonizing the characters. So you ask, why? How's that relevant here? Well, it's not that this is about the antagonizing force, but it's about that the thing which we're waiting on to make a move, which is the wings, we're constantly checking in on, right? So at this point, we've actually been exposed to the wings. We see the progress of the wings, and we have a point of understanding, okay, this is about approximately how far they are away, and this is the timing of that. So we know this lady's coming. We know she's going to get married off in a month. So we'll see how the author does a job of consistently bringing up the wings and the forces at play, which create that sense of urgency. Because so oftentimes, and I have some books examples of this, like I just mentioned, in terms of antagonizing forces, but even other things where they're sort of waiting on the completion of something or they're working on something and that thing never comes up again. It comes up in one scene and then 85% of the book or movie will go by and then it comes up again and it's mentioned, but it's never actually directly shown in our experience. So it's going to be really good to kind of have this come up. I think another good example of a movie that does this right, that's easy, is October Sky, which is just a great movie. Jake Gyllenhaal when he was young, but he's building a rocket, and you see the progress of him building the rocket as the family drama and everything else is happening. But you see that progress as he's slowly moving up, and you see it grow and progress. And so this is going to be really cool to see how the wings affect the plot, and as well as just their application for Venezia, because she's looking for a combat multiplier because she's a manipulative lady. Now, once again, we'll have that video put in earlier where we can talk a bit about Venezia, but this is a really good example of just constantly bringing up points to create urgency throughout the script. And as well, talk about good prose, right? I love the way this ended here. It was a really good ending. She talks about focusing on the wings, focusing on Selmo, beating Primo at his own game, focus on Cheryl's happiness as well as her own. The wings had been a simple dream for a while, but now they meant so much more, and Imelda wanted more. So talk about really making the point of focus driven home and just being clear about what the heck we're reading and what's understanding. So this is a good example of, guys, this is how you make something clear and you get it out there. So I loved reading this. It was fun, and I'm excited to see where this goes with Imelda. So guys, thanks a bunch for listening it out. Keep it up, learning more about different writing techniques, and as well as Feathers Sharp as Knives. We'll keep releasing the chapters so you guys can follow the story along if you like it, as well as once we start getting the links for pre-order and such, feel free to check it out as well so you can read it on your own without my monotone, boring voice. But guys, Thanks so much for checking it out, the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And don't hesitate to submit your own entries. We do have public entries, and those are open now. So if you have a first chapter or a short story that you'd love to get featured, please submit it down below in the link, and we'll see if we can't get a public read-through and get it out there. Of course, all entries are anonymous unless asked by the author. So yeah, feel free, if you'd love some good feedback on your stuff, feel free to pop it up and let's get it on. Thanks so much. Stay happy, stay healthy, and remember, guys, keep writing. Peace.